Bueno, están buscando al señor Bobdin, esperemos que no esté en compañía de malos extraterrestres. Tenemos, por las preguntas que ustedes nos han hecho llegar, bueno, la impresión de que todos los conferenciantes han resultado interesantes y hay muchas preguntas para cada uno de ellos y algunas genéricas. Si les parece, voy a ir repartiendo un poco el juego entre todos los conferenciantes. Algunas de las preguntas, por lo que veo, se repiten, por lo tanto, bueno, eso ayudará también a llevar el debate. La primera pregunta sería para el señor Nick Pope. A Nick Pope le preguntan si usted cree que el caso Rendlesham, que nos ha contado en su conferencia, también tiene un archivo en el Departamento de Defensa y si no ha sido todavía entregado, no ha sido hecho público, si cree que lo será al completo en alguna de las próximas desclasificaciones del Gobierno. No sé si habrá...
I just got this working.
Uh-huh.
I just got this working, so you have to repeat.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay.
Spanish, English.
You have to repeat the question.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat. Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, I repeat the question.
Okay.
Okay. La pregunta es si usted cree que el incidente de Rendlesham tiene un archivo, o sea, le corresponde un archivo en los archivos secretos del Gobierno, y si no ha sido liberado todavía, si lo será en alguna de las próximas desclasificaciones del Gobierno británico.
The Rendlesham Forest file was actually declassified and released under the Freedom of Information Act back in 2001, so it predates this current mass release of files. Having said that, there are some more documents that researchers believe exist, but these documents are likely to be Department of Defense documents and United States Air Force documents. One of the things that happened immediately after the incident was that General Gabriel, who was Commander-in-Chief, United States Air Force in Europe, paid a visit, an unscheduled visit to the base that even the commanding officer was unaware of, and he took certain items relating to the case, such as the original tape recording that Colonel Holt took. So researchers believe that this material must have been taken to Ramstein and maybe then back to Washington, and that there should be maybe other documents relating to the analysis of what was found and what was concluded. Now, I am irritated about this, of course, because this is an example of the Americans not briefing the British on something that happened in our country.
Lo siento. Well, I have to say, also, I might add to this, is that there are many cases around the world that the classified projects in the United States end up acquiring, and they go into this black pit of Calcutta, this black hole of information. And to the point that, and I want to share this to give you an idea why I would not be hopeful that much of this might come to light through any executive action by President Obama. When Gordon Cooper, as you all know, who was a witness and who was involved in what we were doing early on, I was at a meeting with him, giving a lecture in Washington a few years before he passed away. And Gordon Cooper was a early, I believe, a Mercury astronaut, and he said that he had given Secretary of Defense Cohen, who was the Secretary of Defense for President Clinton, the detailed information of the landing of an extraterrestrial vehicle, I believe in 1956, on a dry lake bed in near Edwards Air Force Base, and that he had personally handled it and sent it back on a plane back to the Pentagon. And he had all the detailed information about that event. even with that level of information from a U.S. astronaut, a guy who was at the time, I believe, a colonel, who handled the actual film and saw it, of a broad daylight landing of one of these vehicles, with that much information, the sitting Secretary of Defense for the United States of America could not access that file. And this, I was told directly by Gordon Cooper, who had been involved personally with Secretary of Defense Cohen on this matter.
Muchas de las preguntas que nos han llegado a la mesa tienen que ver con la visión que casi todos ustedes han dado sobre la presencia de extraterrestres, vamos a decir así, con buenas intenciones. Pero hay muchas preguntas, como digo, de personas preocupadas por esos casos en los que la actuación o la actitud de esos visitantes parece que es agresiva contra la especie humana. En concreto, por centrarlo en alguno de los conferenciantes de la mesa, hay una pregunta dirigida al profesor Salla, que dice si cree que somos una granja humana para algunos de estos extraterrestres y de alguna manera podemos ser una especie de alimento para ellos, alimento psíquico al menos para ellos. ¿Qué opina usted de eso?
I think it's very important
to switch on the... that's it. No?
Yeah. Not working now?
Try again.
Is that working now? Can you hear me now?
No. Press the button. No?
Mine is on.
Okay, now, great. I think it's very important to acknowledge that in 1951 there was a creation of an organisation called the Psychological Strategy Board, and one of the primary intentions of creating that in the United States was to conduct a program of psychological warfare that would basically use psychological processes to frighten the American population so that they would be less likely to believe in the reality of extraterrestrial life. And I believe that one of the primary mechanisms used of that was to exploit the kind of war of the world's motives so that people could be intimidated into believing that if extraterrestrials are visiting us, that they're kind of evil, flesh-eating beings that are here to kind of psychically exploit us. And I think that we really need to look closely at these psychological warfare programs from 1951. There have been actual Freedom of Information Act releases confirming that, in fact, the program Majestic in 1952 actually requested Pentagon support for conducting its psychological warfare program with logistic support, and it was a very big program that's been conducted off the books. So I think we have to look very seriously that much of the literature concerning negative extraterrestrials is very closely related to psychological warfare programs. So we have to investigate that and be very careful making generalizations about negative extraterrestrials.
También tenemos unas cuantas preguntas de asistentes desconfiados en esta sala. Y le preguntan al doctor Stephen Greer cómo podemos saber que lo que explican ustedes en el Disclosure Project no forma parte de la agenda del New World Order.
How it's not, well, I would like to see if we had a new order in the world. Whether it's the New World Order that you're talking about is another matter. The world's equilibrium is lamentably defective, and certainly it is going to have to go through a series of major surgeries and transformations in order to be anything resembling a sustainable civilization into the future. I don't believe that any of this has to do with establishing some fearsome super state, except to the extent that there are two ways for the world to come together, through fear or through oneness. I think that if it comes together through fear, it empowers the military-industrial complex, which has gotten out of control and is now more than $1 trillion a year in expenditures. If it comes together in peace and a sense of the oneness that we all share, not just as humans, but as intelligent life in the universe, then there can be a wonderful world that is unified and peaceful. So I think that really it depends on the state of consciousness of who is speaking of this. My greatest concern, and I have said, and I actually wrote a paper that said this, I would prefer secrecy to a false disclosure that causes panic and fear and plays into the majestic plan of interplanetary conflict, because this is exactly what Wernher von Braun warned about on his deathbed. And this is exactly what other people that I have met with who have seen the plans to use these alien reproduction vehicles that are made at these aerospace industries and all kinds of advanced weapon systems to simulate an attack, or, in many cases, to engage in false military abductions. Now, there are people who've had actual ET contact, and there are other people who have been victims of abductions that have been using very advanced systems, and not just in the United States and Europe, but in South America and all over the world. And this is something that I have absolutely no doubt of. And so therefore, you have to begin to question who benefits from this fear. Was the same people who benefited from 9/11.
Mm-hmm. La siguiente pregunta también es para el doctor Steve Greer. No sé si en su condición de miembro del Disclosure Project o fundador del Disclosure Project o en su condición de médico de emergencias, dice que si él tiene alguna opinión o algún consejo respecto a la vacunación, respecto a las epidemias de las que tanto se está hablando en los medios de comunicación, que cuál es su postura a ese respecto.
Oh, well. I know there are many people who have opinions about this. Certainly it is possible that biological warfare programs could be unleashed on the public and that they could be carried through vaccination programs. I have reason to believe HIV in Africa was propelled this way. However, I don't want to digress into that. My own feeling is you should find a physician that you trust, and if you feel you need it, do it, and use your intuition and your own feeling. I don't mind getting a flu shot in the fall. I have done so in the past. My children were vaccinated against some diseases. There are other people who don't feel that they should do that. It's a calculated risk. I don't personally have any information about an attempt to inoculate the public with something that would be injurious through a vaccination program. I have certainly seen the information and the concerns that people have, but I don't have any information on that, so I would tell people to follow their own intuition and their doctor's advice and what they feel is right for them.
Gracias. La siguiente pregunta es para el doctor Brian O'Leary. Dice, una de las personas, uno de ustedes, dice, si existen fuentes de energía libre viables a día de hoy, ¿por qué no se hacen públicas en esta conferencia para evitar que vuelvan a ser censuradas?
I didn't quite catch the entire question.
La repito. Si existen fuentes de energía libre viables a día de hoy, ¿por qué no se hacen públicas en esta conferencia de una vez por todas para evitar que vuelvan a ser censuradas?
Well, here's the problem. We have a problem in, like the chicken and the egg, what comes first? We're caught in a conundrum of technology, where many concepts, proofs of concepts are out there, but usable devices don't yet exist. We're on the threshold of developing them. I think Steve Greer will be talking about that tomorrow. I talked a little about it today, but an analogy which I think is a very good one is aviation, where the Wright brothers were first flying and nobody believed it. And it wasn't really believed until, well, thousands of people saw it happen. We're now in a very beginning stages of developing this in the public domain. In the secrecy domain, these technologies have already existed. And I am absolutely convinced, as a scientist who's investigated these things very deeply, that there are many, many concepts out there, any one or some of which could solve the energy problem once and for all. But the problem is, in the United States and also in other countries, the so-called energy research and development organizations have not promoted this at all. This should be a public concern. It should be available to everybody. By its very nature, it's free. It's our birthright. And so at a conference like this, there can be no revelation until we have enough people coming together to actually demonstrate this and to actually disseminate it as fast as possible.
Para el señor, bueno, por aquí dicen que no ha contestado, ¿no? Dice que les pediría una respuesta más concreta, o si alguno de ustedes quiere responder.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at it. There's a saying, Lao Tzu, those who know do not say, and those who say do not know. And what I mean by this is that I've gone all over the world looking for existing systems that operate exactly what you're asking for. I have seen a couple. In every case, either the inventor disappears or they are discouraged from coming forward and letting us bring it out to the public. As soon as there is one, and I will promise this to you, as soon as there is one that is available, that we are allowed to take possession of, test properly, reproduce it scientifically, and be sure that it is what the claims around it are, it will be known. And we will not only show it here, we'll show it on the internet and everywhere else. And I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. And I want to give you one little example of the kinds of things that happen. There was a man named Stan Meyer who was running a car on water. And this was not a hoax. And I head up the OrionProject.org, and we're in the process of trying to acquire that entire collection. It is thought that he was killed towards the end of his life. He certainly died under mysterious circumstances. I've seen the autopsy report. What we do know, a man that worked with him, the most advanced system that he had that was not even electrolyzing water so you could run a car on it, but it was an electromagnetic device that was an over-unity free energy device, that had an NSO on it, a national security order on it. And this we have now discovered in the last 60 days. So what happens around the world is that often these devices are either bought up or the inventors are threatened, or something mysterious happens to the inventor before he can bring it out. And there's a long history of this, a proven history of it. What we're trying to do is change that dynamic by identifying a system or people who will provide the funding so we can open our own laboratory. And if we do that, I think within a year to 18 months, we will have such a device because we know the people who can work on it. And I'm going to go into this in a lot of detail tomorrow, but I can tell you that the potential is there, but actually being able to bring it out and demonstrate it, that's a Promethean effort. That'd be like dragging a ET spacecraft out of Fort Huachuca. It isn't as easy as just waving around your hand and making a generator do this. Now, there are some people in Spain, I have learned recently, that may have such a breakthrough technology, and we're in the process of pursuing that. And I think that any time that we can confirm it and reproduce it, it'll be known by all of you, because if it's the last thing I do, the people will know about it and the people will have it, and that is our commitment.
I might also add, I'd also like to add the fact that there's a huge difference between research, development, deployment of technology, and to expect somebody to have a viable, marketable, free energy device would be like asking the Wright brothers to deliver passengers, mail, or bombs. We simply haven't gotten to that point yet, but we could with support, with public support. And I truly believe the technologies are very real. They just haven't been developed enough yet.
La pregunta siguiente está dirigida a Klaus Dona. Le preguntan, señor Dona, ¿qué son, en su opinión, las líneas de Nazca? Si de origen terrestre o de origen extraterrestre.
Hay más de 80 diferentes opiniones. Yo personalmente no tengo la verdad, no sé la verdad, pero hay también líneas en Bolivia, muchísimas líneas, y posiblemente también en varios otros países, pero las explicaciones que son hasta ahora no creo que son la verdad, pero yo no sé, y por eso no puedo decir una opinión.
Muchas de las preguntas que nos han hecho llegar son abiertas, son para todos los conferenciantes, para que las respondan en mayor o menor medida según lo que ellos quieran. De todas ellas, la más directa, la más personal, es la siguiente. ¿Quién de ustedes o quiénes de ustedes han sido contactados físicamente por extraterrestres? ¿Han tenido algún contacto físico con extraterrestres? Y si ese es el caso, ¿cuál es el mensaje?
I have had no contact with anything, and I've never even seen a UFO, but I very much hope that one day I will.
Well, I have, and you know, the message, the contact was very physical and very real, and it has been more than once, and the message has always been the vision. It's always about the vision. It's always about, it's not like they say, you know, here's a formula for, you know, a new Coca-Cola or something or whatever. It's not a linear experience. It's an experience in the territory we share together in the cosmic being, and the understanding of where our civilization is and the promise of where it will be, and what we have to do to get there. What are the steps to get there? And that's really began for me when I was 18, and after I had this near-death experience, you know, I was raised a very devout atheist. I always say a devout atheist. My parents were fanatically atheists. And so it was quite a revolution for me to realize that there was a universal being, and there was life after death, and many of these things are true. And so I wanted to learn meditation, and so I learned a type of Vedic meditation and mantra meditation. And the first time I sat to meditate, I went right into that state of samadhi. And so about 6 I was off at college, and I was hiking up on a mountain, and it was beautiful, and it was in October, and I was wearing a ski jacket. It was very cold, up about 6,000 feet high. And I sat, before meditation, I saw this extraterrestrial spacecraft, like the picture we showed from the Outer Banks, but clearer, in very clear air. And it was exactly like the one I saw when I was 8 or 9 years old. They'd come back. They were very interested. And I just acknowledged it, and then it dematerialized and vanished. So I sat to meditate on the mountaintop, and I went into a very deep state of consciousness. And when I was completed with the meditation, it had gotten very dark, and the Milky Way galaxy was overhead, and the stars. It was just so beautiful. And this very crisp, clear air in October of 1973. suddenly a transmission, a message was sent into my awareness. It was not my own thinking. And it said, "Behold what a beautiful universe God has made." And with that, I went right back into that state that I was in when I had my near-death experience, a state of a God consciousness and beautiful experience. And I then realized there was this person here, like you, huh? It was right here. And so he touched me on my right shoulder, just this firmly, like that. And all the hair on my head stood on end. It was like electromagnetic. And I used to have hair then, more hair. And I sort of dematerialized, and I was on this, like a translucent craft for about 3 hours. And that's when we co-created the Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind protocols using consciousness and tonality and all of these things as sort of the universal resonator for contact. And so after that, many things happened. But yes, it was I write about this in my autobiography, Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which is now in about 8 languages, but regrettably not in Spanish. I need a good Spanish translator. But it is in French, and it's in Croatian and Japanese and Russian and everything. But you can get it in English or French on disclosureproject.org. But I tell about this, and it was a very beautiful experience. And I have to say, initially a little afraid, because I was an 18-year-old boy, and before I had this experience where I was sort of teleported mysteriously on this craft, I really thought, what is this animal want with me? But it was beautiful. It had deer-shaped eyes and short and no hair. Beautiful eyes, though. Stunning. Not these black, scary eyes. Those are the programmed life forms. People say, how do you know the difference? I said, I've seen both. I know the ones that are man-made and the ones that are real ET. But the knowledge the experience is the great teacher. But and it was a beautiful experience. But the message was not so much information-based. It was more experience-based, if that makes any sense.
Quería añadir a la pregunta que, bueno, el hecho de que justamente estas personas que están en estos momentos no hayan visto concretamente ningún extraterrestre, pues no tiene por qué significar, pues no sé, que estemos aquí perdiendo el tiempo. Entre otras cosas porque, por ejemplo, Bob Dean, que en estos momentos no está, él sí ha visto también, igual que Steven ha comentado.
Todo esto son preguntas para Bob Dean, ¿eh?
Estas son preguntas para Bob Dean, ¿no? Fíjate. Y por otra parte, comentar que, bueno, que hay más de... bueno, incluso en la película Fast Walkers hablan de 150 millones de personas. Yo no he visto un extraterrestre, pero sí he visto unas luces que no eran un avión. He visto poco. Como esos 150 millones de personas. Hay 10.000 aterrizajes documentados. Hemos visto fotos, todas las del mundo aquí. Hay fotos de seres que se han visto. A ver, yo no he visto el Taj Mahal y me parece que existe. Con lo cual, no tenemos por qué, o sea, no tiene por qué ser factor importante el hecho de decir que de las 7 personas que hay aquí, pues bueno, podamos ser estudiosos, o puedan ser, sobre todo ellos, estudiosos del tema, sin tener que haber visto físicamente un extraterrestre.
Can I just add something quickly? With regard to the question of contact with extraterrestrials, I certainly have not had physical contact with extraterrestrials, but I think it's something that we might easily overlook is that, in fact, in 1961, when Project Ozma, which was the forerunner to SETI, began to inquire into the question of extraterrestrial life in the galaxy, they said that there were 2 forms of intelligence on the planet, humans and dolphins or cetaceans. So cetaceans were acknowledged by that group back in 1961 as being a non-human advanced intelligence on the planet. And since that time there have been many classified studies done on dolphin intelligence, dolphin communication, and these have been very highly classified. And so I think this is part of what the Navy does in terms of training of the dolphins and cetaceans. And in Hawaii, we're very fortunate that we regularly interact with the dolphins and even with the whales. We have physical interactions with them. And often people who do that report high strangeness activities around them. They often people feel kind of telepathic communications happening, some kind of dimensional shift, portal shifts, very strange, very high strangeness related phenomena. So I haven't had, as I said, any physical interaction with extraterrestrials, but I think that just the physical interaction with dolphins and whales as well does kind of prepare one for such an encounter in the future.
Brian?
I've been wanting to have a direct personal experience of contacting extraterrestrial intelligence, but I haven't yet. But what I have had were several paranormal experiences which got me into this crazy game in the first place. And so when I was a professor in the physics department at Princeton University 30 years ago, I had a remote viewing experience. And then I had a healing experience. And then I had a near-death experience in which I left my body and went into the light. And that just totally convinced me that the physics that I was teaching at Princeton was very mundane compared to what was possible. I now live in Ecuador in the village of Vilcabamba, and recently I had my first UFO sighting with 4 other people, and I know that they're out there. And Steve, we'd love you to come with a group sometime so we can really have the direct experience.
Good. Maybe you will come with us, yes. I want to say also, we need to not be so materialistic in our view. Okay, we have physical bodies. We also have bodies of light and conscious bodies, and those are just as real. They should not be diminished. And I said during my talk something that kind of went quickly, and that is the number one way that humans, Homo sapiens, have had contact over the ages with these interstellar civilizations is in the lucid dream state. When you are in a dream, you are awake in the dream, and you are actually interacting and contacting these beings in the dream state. And the reason for that is that when you put a resonance frequency field around this bottle, and it shifts beyond the speed of light, zap, whoop, you suddenly are in another, quote, dimension. And that dimension, some have called the astral, or the field of that kind of subtle energy. And guess what? Humans are the ultimate interdimensional thing in creation. We have physical bodies that are material and atoms. Within that is this body of light, this so-called astral body. Within that is the thought body, the essence of your individuality, and within that is this spark of this unbounded divine conscious being. All of that is folded within you. And there's a wonderful saying from the Sufi tradition, and it's a rhetorical question. And it goes, thinkest thyself a puny form when within thee the universe is folded?
La siguiente pregunta se ha repetido en varias ocasiones en los papeles que tengo sobre la mesa y tiene que ver un poco con la física mundana de la que hablaba Brian O'Leary, porque les preguntan a todos ustedes, para que responda quien desee, ¿qué piensan ustedes sobre la posibilidad de que el planeta Tierra sea hueco y pueda albergar algún tipo de inteligencia que no conocemos? Oh. Any one of you want to answer?
Could the Earth be hollow? And you think it could be hollow?
Whenever anybody says something that violates my sense of what's physical, I have to reach into new dimensions of reality. And so I'm constantly being asked to reach beyond the three dimensions of physicality. And in the case of the hollow earth, well, geophysically, that's not possible, but that's physical. And a physical look at things is very, very limited. And I'm completely convinced that people's paranormal experiences, such as viewing a hollow earth, are, because there have been many, many witnesses, are very valid experiences. However, it may not be in the physical realms, and that's okay. And this is the kind of thing that makes my life sometimes difficult, because for years and years and years I've been inside this box of physicality and materialism, and then I start to have paranormal experiences myself, and then I find that not only is this open for my experience, but science and the methodology of science can be brought to bear to, quote, prove the reality of these things, so we can have it all ways. And in other words, what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I'm willing to be open to whatever. And if my colleague, Jim Oberg, by the way, who says, Brian, don't have such an open mind that your brains will spill out, I say, that's fine.
I can elucidate this a little bit. Because I think it's a matter of understanding some physics that gets into the WSFM, weird science and frickin' magic. And here's a fact. This is a scientific fact. If you were to collapse all the solid matter of your body, it would fit on the tip of a pen. That is all you are. The rest of it is, quote, empty space. What is that? What is the empty space? What is the matrix in space that your body is filling? Now, when I do this, my hand doesn't go through my arm. However, if you put a highly developed electromagnetic energy field around this hand, it can go straight through this arm and come out the other side, and no atom will touch another atom, because most of this is empty space, and it's about spin and resonance field. And this is why many people have reported, and we have seen this on our expeditions, extraterrestrial vehicles go straight through a mountain. And why don't they crash into the mountain? In 1996, I had 30 people out in the desert, and we had an extraterrestrial vehicle that came straight out of the zenith, and it went towards the Earth. It was a teal blue color, and it was shaped just like a Hershey's Kissy, you know, the little chocolates that are flat on the bottom and come up like this. And it was huge, 200 or 300 feet across, seen by many people. And we were in this remote area of Joshua Tree National Park in the high desert. It came straight down out of the space, and as it approached the Earth, it illuminated the entire desert like it was daytime. And then it merged into the Earth. And they were showing us where they have an underground extraterrestrial facility. And this is where we've been having so much of this contact, and the Orion transmissions started at that very spot. We go there. We're going to go there in November. If you want to come, come. Now, what's interesting is that many people would say, how could it have hit the Earth and not exploded? It's because of the physics that deal with enabling matter to be tilted a little bit out of linear space-time, so that solid matter can then go straight through something else. Now, I am working with a renowned physicist. I cannot say what country, but he is a very senior person in a Ministry of Defense and an advisor to a head of state. And this person was at an experiment recently where they took, this is a human experiment, where they took two cats, you know, gatos, meow, like that, and they were able to bring these two cats, and they caused the two cats to become one. They occupied the same space, and then they separated them, and they went off and were perfectly normal and fine. Absolutely, this is possible, and it has been done within classified projects. So if that's possible within classified projects, imagine what an interstellar civilization can do. And for this reason, I tell people the amazing ways that these interstellar civilizations will interface with us is almost beyond your imagination. And it's beautiful and wondrous, but it's opening up a whole new era of science to study.
Hay una pregunta más para Nick Pope. Es una pregunta interesante porque compara lo que ha sucedido en España con la desclasificación con lo que ha ocurrido en Gran Bretaña. Le preguntan, señor Pope, si, igual que en España hay algunos casos desclasificados donde se habla de humanoides, de presencia de humanoides, junto a objetos aterrizados o vistos por testigos, si en los documentos estudiados por el Ministerio de Defensa británico también hay alguna alusión no solo a ovnis, a luces, sino también a sus tripulantes.
Yes, the Ministry of Defence files do contain a small number of cases which I guess you would categorise as being contactee cases, and also a small number of cases that you would characterise as being abduction cases. But the numbers are very small, and I think one of the reasons for this is that, firstly, people are more reluctant to report, I think, a contact experience than a UFO sighting because of the fear of ridicule and disbelief. The second reason why we have so few cases in the Ministry of Defence is, of course, a lot of people who have had these experiences and then research the subject believe that the Ministry of Defence are involved in a cover-up, or think that we know about all this already. So to some people, we are the bad guys, I'm afraid. So yes, we do have some cases, but not very many. And some of those cases have been released, but unfortunately, when I was running this project, I separated out the contact cases, and I think I just found in some old files 5 or 6 contactee cases. I put them in one file, and that's been released, but my successors didn't do that. They just put the contactee and abduction cases in the standard UFO files. So I'm afraid it's a question of having to go through these thousands and thousands of pages until you find one. But they are there.
La siguiente pregunta es para Robert Dean. Señor Dean, le estábamos esperando. Gracias por unirse a nosotros. Su conferencia ha despertado mucho interés, en especial todo lo relacionado con las fotografías de las Apolo y, bueno, la historia secreta de la carrera espacial. Una de las personas del público le pregunta si tiene el gobierno, cree usted que tiene el gobierno norteamericano bases en la Luna, secretas, y qué sabe usted sobre posibles accidentes con muertes en la Luna. Repito. La pregunta es si cree usted que tiene el gobierno norteamericano bases secretas en la Luna y si conoce usted algún tipo de información que hable de muertes de astronautas en la Luna que se hayan podido ocultar a la opinión pública.
Do I think there's a United States base on Mars?
On the moon.
On the moon.
On the moon.
I have dreaded that question for years. I have hesitated to speak out about what I've learned because of the sensitivity of this subject. I will tell you this. The United States has a separate space program, totally separate from NASA. We've had this separate space program now for over 30 years. It's under the command and auspices of what they call the Aerospace Command. The military have been launching craft from a variety of different places in the United States for years and years. They launch out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. They launch out of Site 51 in Nevada, Groom Lake. They launch out of a site in Utah, and they launch out of an American alien joint base on Kwajalein Atoll in the Pacific Islands. The American people have been literally taken to the cleaners, if you'll pardon the term. Trillions of dollars have been stolen from the American taxpayer that have totally disappeared. To give you an example, in the years 1998, 99, and 2000, $1.7 trillion a year disappeared from the Department of Defense accountability. Now, when this information was delivered to Congress, I would have thought, most of my friends would have thought, there would have been an outrage, a complaint, a demand to know the answer to this. Where in the world did all this money go? Well, this money has been going into this separate space program. We have technology, capabilities far beyond what the average human being would imagine. Yes, we are in space. Yes, we are on the moon, and God help us, yes, we have gone to Mars. Just to give you another example of the outrage and the crime that has been committed against the American people. In the year 2001, the day before 9/11, are you all familiar with the Twin Towers destruction? The day before that event took place, the Secretary of Defense made an announcement publicly that we seem to have misplaced and lost $3 trillion.
That's correct.
In addition to the 1.7 per year for the 3 previous years. But there was no outrage in Congress. It didn't appear in the American media. The congressional representatives who are supposed to represent the average American did not declare complaint and outrage. The whole thing was forgotten because of the Holocaust, the heartbreak, the disaster of 9/11. But the very day before, the Secretary of Defense announced $3 trillion was missing. Now, this is the money that goes into the support of this separate space program that we have been running now for years. I will close by giving you just as in a small example. A brilliant American aerospace engineer by the name of Ben Rich, who ran a research organization in California called the Skunk Works. It was an incredibly advanced aerospace technology from one of our top aerospace organizations. Ben retired a number of years ago, and during his retirement speech, he said, "Hey, I got a surprise for you. We can take E.T. home." Now, this was about the same time the movie E.T. was appearing throughout the country. We have the ability to take E.T. home. And everybody looked at him and said, "My God, Ben, what are you talking about?" He went up to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and he wrote, "Unfunded opportunities." And everybody looked at each other and said, "What the hell is he talking about? Unfunded opportunities." Ben went over to the board again and he circled UFO. And then he left the stage. So, some of them have been trying to tell us what they can do. Some of us have been trying to give us some indication of what is taking place. But yes, the American space program, the one that the American people know nothing about, does have an installation on the moon alongside alien facilities, and we do now have a small facility on Mars alongside Martian capabilities. This is part of the scandal that I was referring to you before that causes me and others like me to have such outrage that the American people who they're good people, they're damn good, hard-working people, and they have for years bled and given everything they had to this program, this country, this constitutional system, and they've been lied to so repeatedly that I must tell you, I am fearful that the American mass public is reaching a point where they may not decide to take this anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I am fearful to tell you they are buying guns and they are stockpiling ammunition. I live in the Southwest, and it's going on, and these people are so angry, and so angry at their government for all the lies, that I'm fearful that an event may occur where we will have another American Revolution. And I fear that because there will be blood in the streets. And I've been through 2 wars, and I don't want to see another one. But the American people deserve better than what they've been getting from their government. This economic slump that you're all aware of, which is worldwide, millions of American working people have lost their jobs. They're losing their homes. And there's a point where they will not take any more. And that worries me. But yes, we have a separate program. Yes, we are on Mars, and yes, we are on the moon. And yes, we can take E.T. home.
De sociedad de élite para migrar del planeta cuando ya fuera inhabitable y llevar a una selección de humanos a Marte, a vivir a Marte.
Well, I'm aware of the program, and it was a British made show, as I recall. My view is that it was what it subsequently claimed to be, a joke for our April Fool's Day. And we do similar jokes. There was another program about spaghetti growing on trees and how the spaghetti harvest had failed one year. And this was just another one of these spoof programs. But I know that a lot of people have disagreed with me on this. But yes, I'm aware of it, but I think it was a joke.
¿Alguna otra opinión? No?
Well, I have a small,
continuando con... sí.
I have a small contribution to make.
Okay, please.
There is a program underway. It's not called Alternative 3. There apparently is a vast program underway in the United States to protect the elite. Now, whoever the hell they are, I don't know, but I know they're a group of people who have selected themselves to be the elite. In the event of a forthcoming disaster, they want to be protected. For years and years and years, we have been building in my country massive underground facilities. I was a part of that program when I worked for the Federal Emergency Management Agency for many, many years. I have been into some of those massive underground facilities, and let me tell you, they are literally underground cities. Now, originally, they were designed because of the cold thermonuclear war threat. The Soviet Union threatened us. We were threatening them. There was a real danger for a long, long time that we might lose control of this matter and that there would be a thermonuclear war. And we were building these underground facilities. Billions of dollars were going into it. And they were survival facilities, primarily designed originally for the government. So in the event of a nuclear war, the government, the president, the executive branch, the Congress, the legislative, judicial, they could all go down in comfort in these massive facilities. There was underground reservoirs of water, stockpiles of food, stockpiles of medicine, and the original program that I was involved in during those years I was with FEMA was known as Continuity of Government. We called it, with the acronym, COG, the continuity of government program to protect the American government in the event of a thermonuclear war. That program has expanded to such a point that it will not merely accommodate the American government, but the program has expanded so it could accommodate several million people. But the average American taxpayer doesn't know anything about this. And if there was a serious event forthcoming, which I do believe there is going to be a serious event involving the 10th planet, which is a reality that most people don't even want to talk about, that when this event occurs, when planet X, as it were, makes its pass through the center of our solar system in the few short years ahead, we're going to be in very, very serious trouble. Because every time Nibiru, as the Sumerians called it, comes on its 3,600-year orbit, all hell breaks loose. There are hurricanes, there are tidal waves, there are earthquakes. The entire planet is affected. Well, these massive underground cities, I think, have been designed to protect the elite. And if the average American taxpayer finds out about this, there will be trouble. There will be blood in the streets.
Yeah, and I want to confirm that what Bob is saying. I have had people who have worked with the Bechtel Corporation and others that have built these underground facilities, and I should also add underground connectors. You can go underground near Washington and surface hundreds of miles out in underground facilities. You can go underground near Edwards Air Force Base and surface very quickly with anti-grav propulsion systems.
They're known as maglev, yes, maglev systems.
And you will surface all the way over in at Nellis or up at Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, or in the Dulce facility, which does exist. There is also a member of my team who's an electromagnetic engineer at Los Alamos who has confirmed to me that there is an underground connector from the Los Alamos National Laboratories area to the Four Corners Dulce area and continuing on to the Area 51 facility. It is also true that they do have these sort of contingency plans, and they are anticipating significant geophysical stress and distress in the near future. And this is something that most people don't want to hear a whole lot about. But they have used billions of dollars. And by the way, the tunneling system is way back as early 70s. A member of my team was read into or briefed on the device, and it's a nuclear-powered tunneling machine that literally turns enormous tunnels into like glassified rock. It's like glass and these massive tunnels. And many years ago, you may have heard these reports in New Mexico. There was something called the Taos hum, and all the mystics thought it was some kind of earth energy or what have you. In reality, it was this tunnel being built from Los Alamos over to the Dulce facility. And as it went through the bedrock, it made this humming sound. And it was actually reported in Newsweek in the mainstream magazines, but of course they would never tell the public what they were actually building. But yes, that's very true.
Since I'm blowing my cover and putting myself on the line here, I'll probably have my passport pulled from me when I go home next week. I will tell you of a reality that I was stunned to find out that really exists. 10 stories down in the ground, in a place called S4, which is near Groom Lake, Site 51, there is a national laboratory where my friend told me he worked for 5 years, where he met these two visitors from another planet. There is a facility there, 10 stories underground, where you can go through a doorway in Nevada, have your bags packed, step through the doorway, and you are in Pine Gap, Australia.
That's correct. Yeah.
You go through the door in Nevada, and the next moment you are in Pine Gap, Australia. Now, people say, what the hell's going on at Pine Gap, Australia? Well, it happens to be probably the largest national security agency facility on the planet. And what's interesting about it, it is also the location of one of the largest extraterrestrial facilities on the planet, underground in the middle of Australia at Pine Gap.
La última palabra de esta tarde la tiene el Dr. Brian O'Leary.
Yeah, I was just going to mention in Europe, there's also Spitsbergen Island north of Norway, near the North Pole, which is a repository for seeds and lots of humans, and that's another option for ducking for cover in the event of an Armageddon. And I think that if we combine in positive consciousness, I truly believe we can avoid these situations and we can truly come into unity.
Bien, con ese mensaje positivo me complace que terminemos la primera sesión de esta cumbre de hoy y les emplazo a dos citas. La primera esta noche a quienes vayan a participar en la cena con los ponentes, será aquí en el hotel a las 10:15. Y la otra cita, evidentemente, será mañana a las 10 de la mañana, que reabriremos sesión con Paola Harris y continuaremos analizando este mundo. Lo importante es que ustedes mantengan siempre la independencia de criterio. No se crean nada, investíguenlo todo, compruébenlo y saquen sus propias conclusiones.